HOA broke into my house for a $5 fine, but my ex-Special Forces son was ready for them. I used to think peace was just the absence of noise. That was before I learned what it feels like when someone tries to take it from you. All over $5. My name's Walter Hayes, 64 years old, retired lineman. I bought this house 15 years ago when my wife and I thought we'd found the perfect little corner of quiet suburbia. It sat at the end of a cul-de-sac backed by pine woods, far enough from town that nights were silent except for crickets. Back then, the neighbors waved, kids rode bikes, and no one cared what shade your mailbox was painted. That changed the year the Homeowners Association was born. At first it was just a few neighbors wanting to protect property values. I didn't think much of it. People like to organize things. It makes them feel important. But within 2 years, the whole street turned into a miniature dictatorship. They fined folks for leaving garden hoses out. They mailed warnings about porch lights being too bright. I tried to ignore it, keep my head down. Then came the trash can fine. I'd been up late fixing a power outage for an old friend out near the lake. Got home after midnight, too tired to drag the cans in. Next morning, a bright yellow envelope sat taped to my door, violation, $5 fine for late trash removal. I actually laughed. $5 wasn't worth a trip to the mailbox. I tossed it aside. But a week later, another letter arrived, thicker, more official. It said, failure to remit payment will result in escalating penalties and enforcement action. That's when I realized it wasn't about money. It was about control. Over the next month, the letters kept coming. The fees climbed to $20, then $50. The language turned threatening: lien rights, legal recovery, forfeiture of privileges. I called their office and asked to speak with the president, Marjorie Dean, a woman who treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She answered with that thin, patronizing voice people use when they think you're beneath them. Mr. Hayes, rules exist for everyone's benefit. If you don't pay, we'll have to enforce compliance. Enforce, that word stuck with me. I told her I'd pay once I got an apology for the harassment. She hung up. After that, small things started happening. My mailbox was dented one morning. A week later, someone slashed a tire on my pickup. I had no proof, but I knew it was them. That's the thing about power. Once people get a taste, they can't stop testing how far it reaches. My son Ethan came home that fall. 8 years in the Special Forces. Calm, measured, the kind of man who reads a room before he walks into it. He'd seen the worst of people overseas but rarely spoke about it. When he did, it was never the violence he mentioned. It was the lack of respect, the arrogance that turned men cruel. He found me one evening sitting on the porch, a fresh notice crumpled in my hand. "They're at it again?" he asked. $5 fine turned into $200 now, I said. He read the letter, chuckled. "You could have bought peace for a cup of coffee." "It's not about the money, son." "I know," he said quietly. "It never is." He offered to go talk to them, but I told him no. I didn't want trouble. That night, though, I saw him outside checking the locks, making notes of blind spots around the yard. Old habits. For a couple of weeks, things went quiet. Maybe they'd realized I wasn't backing down. I fixed my fence, tended the garden, tried to pretend normalcy had returned. Ethan spent his days helping an old veteran friend renovate a cabin up north. Then the letters stopped. No calls, no visits. Silence. It should have felt like peace, but to a man who's worked storms all his life, silence before thunder is never comfort, it's warning. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in April. I was in town picking up lumber for a shed repair. Ethan was home alone, mending a section of the back fence. He told me later how it started: a firm knock on the front door. 3 short raps. He looked through the blinds, saw Marjorie Dean, the HMA president, her vice president Ron Keller, and a heavy-set man in a security uniform. None of them smiled. He didn't open the door. Instead, he watched. Marjorie shouted something he couldn't hear. Then she pulled a folded paper from her folder and waved it like a badge. The guard stepped forward and tried the handle. Locked. Then Ethan saw him pull something small and metallic from his belt, a lock-picking tool. He hit record on his phone. The click of the lock echoed through the living room. The door creaked open. Ron stepped inside first, muttering about unauthorized modifications. That's when Ethan moved, silent, controlled, like he was back clearing a room. "You picked the wrong house," he said from behind them. They froze. Marjorie stammered, "We're within our rights. HOA Covenant 4B allows interior inspection when invited." Ethan cut her off. "You weren't." The security guard took a step forward. Ethan met his eyes. "Another step, and this becomes a self-defense case. You want that?" The man hesitated. Marjorie puffed up like she'd found courage. "We'll call the police." "Good idea," Ethan said. "You'll save me the trouble." He dialed the sheriff right in front of them. Told dispatch that 3 individuals had unlawfully entered private property. Then he stood there, calm as stone, camera rolling until the sirens approached. By the time I pulled into the driveway, 2 patrol cars were parked out front. Marjorie and her entourage stood by the mailbox, faces pale. Ethan leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, phone still in hand. A deputy walked up. "Mr. Hayes." "That's me." "Your son caught them inside?" "That's what it looks like." Ethan showed the video, clear as day, the guard picking the lock, the group stepping through the door. The deputy's jaw tightened. He turned to them. "You understand this is breaking and entering?" Marjorie blurted, "We had administrative authority." "Administrative authority doesn't override criminal law," the deputy said flatly. They were cuffed and taken downtown. The guard protested, Ron begged. Marjorie tried to pull rank like she was running the precinct. None of it mattered. News travels fast in a small town. By morning, everyone knew. The story hit the local paper. HOA board members arrested for unlawful entry. The comments online were brutal. Turns out, plenty of neighbors had their own horror stories. Fines for flowers, threats for fences, warnings for wind chimes. Ethan uploaded the video with faces blurred, captioned, "Know your rights. Even $5 isn't worth your dignity." It went viral overnight. By the end of the week, the entire HOA board resigned. Their lawyer tried to claim miscommunication, but nobody bought it. The association dissolved after an emergency vote. Property values didn't crash, they rose. Freedom, it turns out, is good for curb appeal. When the dust settled, I asked Ethan what he'd been thinking that day. He shrugged. "Same thing I always thought in uniform. Secure the area, de-escalate, don't lose your head." "You could have hurt them," I said. "Yeah. But then they'd play victim." "Control isn't about force, Dad, it's about composure." He was right. Control's a quiet kind of strength. It doesn't shout, doesn't need to prove anything. It just stands its ground and lets truth do the rest. That night, we sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed through the trees. He handed me a beer. "You ever gonna pay that $5?" he asked. I laughed. I think we settled that account in full. Life found its rhythm again. The mail stopped carrying threats. The neighbors started smiling. Some even thanked me for taking the bullet for the rest of them. I told them it wasn't bravery, it was self-respect. Once you let someone by your silence, you've sold more than peace, you've sold yourself. Ethan started teaching defensive tactics at the community center. Folks trusted him instantly, veterans, single moms, retirees. He taught them awareness, not aggression. The best fight, he'd say, is the one you never have to throw a punch in. One Saturday morning, while helping me repair the roof, he said something that stuck. The battlefield changes, but the bullies don't. Out there, they wore uniforms. Here, they hide behind bylaws. You'd think that was the end of it. But people like Marjorie don't disappear quietly. About 6 months later, I saw her car creeping past the house. She didn't stop, just looked, then drove off. That evening, a letter showed up. No return address. Inside was a single line typed in bold. You can't fight structure forever. I showed it to Ethan. He smirked. She's right. But structure crumbles when the foundation's rotten. We filed it with the sheriff. Nothing ever came of it. A year later, a brutal thunderstorm rolled through, the kind that knocks out power and floods basements. I spent hours cutting branches off the road so neighbors could get out. Around midnight, soaked and exhausted, I found Ethan sitting by the fireplace with the dog. He'd rigged emergency lights, calm as ever. "Still think peace is quiet?" he asked. "Peace is knowing you can handle whatever breaks the quiet," I said. We both laughed, low, tired but real. Time passes. The new families here don't even know what the HNA used to be. Kids play in driveways again. People paint their mailboxes however they like. And sometimes, when I see a neighbor forget their trash can overnight, I smile and let it be. Ethan eventually moved out, bought a small cabin near the lake where he trains search and rescue teams. But he still drops by on weekends, always checking locks, scanning corners. Habits don't fade easy. Last summer, we sat on the porch again. He looked out at the street, quiet except for wind through the trees. "Hard to believe all that came from $5, he said. "It was never $5, I told him. It was respect." He nodded, thoughtful. Funny thing about respect, people either learn it the easy way or the hard way. I raised my glass. "Here's to the hard way." He smiled. "Wouldn't have it any other." The world's full of people who confuse authority with power, who think rules are weapons instead of guides. But real power isn't in the bylaws, the fines, or the titles. It's in calm resistance, in standing your ground without losing your composure. Sometimes peace has to be protected, not with anger, but with certainty. Because when men like my son stand between chaos and home, even $5 can become a lesson the whole town remembers. And if the HNA ever thinks of coming back, they'll find the door locked again. Only this time, it won't be the lock they have to worry about.